7:30 time. Now, our speaker tonight, Chris Chapin, I met him a year and a half, a little bit more than a year and a half ago, and we sat down just grabbing a cup of coffee together and talked a little bit about what his real estate goals were and what he may be struggling with. And the biggest thing that he said was, you know what, I'm kind of having a little bit of a difficulty putting all the pieces together. Am I crossing the T's? Am I dotting the I's? How do I get a funding partner? What do I do? And he was coming to the meeting that night, and I said, you know what, I want you to meet some folks. And I introduced him to Kim Harrington and Chris Coy with Brownstone, and he's gone from being a newbie in the seats, just like many of the people in this room, to someone who is now managing 5 to 7 properties every single month. Is doing real estate full time, and I think is loving the life change. Maybe he's a little bit busier, busier than he was before. Who knows? But he's going to explain to you how you can source your deals, just like he does, and how you can be a person who a year from now can be doing the same thing and managing 5 to 7 properties a month. So everybody stand up and give it up for Chris Chapin. Okay, all right. It's already plugged in. We just need to turn it on. It should come up on the screen. Not from me. There you go.
Is it working?
It is. Your 2 beautiful girls
Yeah,
up
but
there.
why are they up there now? Is that better? All right, here we go. Now let's see if the clicker's working.
I hope so. There you go.
That's terrific.
It's working.
All right, everyone. Hello. I'm not a professional speaker in any way whatsoever. I'm very new to the business, like Bernadette just said. It's something that I'm basically going to cover. Let me back up here a little bit. There's our fancy logo. So I'm going to basically cover how it is I've gone about finding a lot of deals. Some efforts are very successful, others not quite as much. It's a numbers game. If you plan on getting into real estate investing and think you're just going to dive in and throw on some shorts and look in the newspaper and throwing an offer on a deal and hire some contractors and kick back and relax, that's not necessarily the way it works. I was hoping it was, but unfortunately that's not necessarily the way it is. So it's a business very much so where you need to hustle. It's a situation where the opportunities are out there. They're not always easy to come across, and when you do come across them, you need to understand how to evaluate them, who to hire, so on and so forth. So those are some of the tricks. So what I'm going to do is show some of the ways that I've come across most successfully coming across my deals, and some of the hurdles that I've had to overcome in order to make them successful. Most all the time that has worked quite well. It's an entrepreneurial business. This is something I got into for many reasons. Always loved real estate. When I was in college, I went to school for architecture, enjoyed it very much when I was in college. Got out into the real world, started working into an office, doing facilities management and some drafting and things of that nature. I didn't like it. I was stuck behind a desk. So at that point, a couple of years into my career, I realized I was not doing what I liked about it. So I started to look at other avenues to find enjoyment in my career, a direction to go into. So I got into advertising, graphic design, helping realtors in the early part of the 2000s with 360 virtual tours, photography, floor plans, all of this kind of thing, doing some web design. So I really made a push to develop my own business that I could get out and do on my own, that I would enjoy. Just to fast forward you through, a few years there, I did that very successfully for a number of years, and then the market tanked. You're in a business where you're supplying services to realtors. They need to cut costs. They don't have as many listings. They don't have as much need for my services. I needed to find a lily pad to jump to a large degree. You don't ever expect to see that type of thing coming, but it does. So what I did is looked at what the skills set that I had was, and basically, like everybody else does, scour the internet, try to find a job, try to look for that spot to go where I would find enjoyment and be able to handle that creative or get the creative outlet for myself. So I got into residential real estate, not as a realtor, again, offering marketing services to residential realtors. Around that same time, I, just like everybody else in here, was watching Flip This Everything on television. There was maybe 1 or 2 shows back in the day, and you watch the show and you see them walking around, driving around their convertibles, finding the houses, yelling at people, and then leaving for coffee. I'm like, wow, there's a terrific job. I really started to explore it at that point. Didn't know where to go, who to talk to, and then you realize that the market being as up and down and volatile as it was, I wasn't about to put all of my own money into it and buy one home, be upside down and be straight out of the business instantly. So I kind of punted and stepped back a little bit, maintained my job in residential real estate, and then around a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I started to really put forth an effort to make that push again, because the market had started to right itself. You can see things were turning around. Again, not knowing what to do. You Google on the internet, I want to be a real estate investor. You come across these various websites, and I hit investment clubs just like this throughout the state. None of them as good as this one, Bernadette, I can assure you of that. But I just started to hit every one of these meetings, much like many of you in here, I bet, looking for how to get involved, how to make that jump from having a full-time job to being a real estate investor and out there and doing that successfully. So after 6 months of doing that, just like Bernadette said, she put me in touch directly. Actually, I sat down with her and said, here's the skill set I have, but I don't have all the contacts for the contractors. I do not have the connections for the financing because I don't want to use my own money. And if I was, I'm not going to be able to buy 5, 6, 7 properties a month. That's not going to be an opportunity. And if it was, why would I be working? Just sit back and relax with my money. So I sat down with her with that list of my needs and my issues, and that's when she put me in touch with Chris and Kim at Brownstone. And we just slowly really started working together, and I started helping with them with some of their graphic design and their marketing and things of that nature. And it kind of grew from there. I started to go to some of the events, and I actually see some similar faces in here. Tony Young's had an event a year and a half or so back. Went to one of those, and you do the weekend meeting, you drive around Timbuktu, going to courthouses, and this, that, and the other thing, and I realized this is something that I can do. So I really, at that point, again, needed to maintain a business, so I was essentially working to a large degree 2 full-time businesses to get myself started in real estate investing. So, a 9-to-5 day at the office, for me, would start at 6 a.m. I would get up and drive around, look for properties, scour the internet, look at Realtor.com. Being in real estate, not being an active realtor, I had access to MLS. So I could set up hot sheets in there, which is something that I found to be very successful. And that was something that kind of led me down that road. But I had to hustle for a long period of time to really start to build that funnel of properties to come to me. And it's still, you still have to work it the whole time you're doing it, still to this day. So when I teamed up with Brownstone, Brownstone is a company that specializes in just this. It is a brokerage. We can list properties to a large degree. That's not the focus. We're looking for distressed property, or they are looking for distressed properties at that particular time. And I thought I could really assist them in growing their business and really starting to take a bigger foothold within the industry than they already have. So, they've been in business for a long period of time, access to the money, the understanding of the value of properties on the other side, so on and so forth. So I thought it'd be a pretty good marriage, or we started dating, I guess. So we started to do that, and it really took off. And 4 months in or so, I really had to make a decision of how am I going to continue to do both of these. I started to have properties out in the Cape, out in the elbow of the Cape from southeastern Mass. That's a long drive to do a couple of times a week, to keep an eye on contractors and find projects and evaluate projects. So I really had to make that change. Please.
When you said these properties, are these all flips? Are they all holds?
No, we're flipping. We're redeveloping. Okay. There's a bad connotation with flipping. But yes, exactly. We're not holding properties necessarily. I have some of my own properties that I hold for myself that I have. as well as, I'm sure a lot of you in here do as well, but primarily we're doing all rehab and resale. So that's, so I have a number of different ways. All right, so this is something that often comes as a question that comes up to me, and the way that I kind of look at it is the market. Dickens is showing certainly that there is a lot of fluctuation, and you certainly have to keep an eye on that. But if there's a stable market to a large degree, if we see some stability in certain areas, you're going to have a much easier job evaluating these properties. I think right now, while they're going up a bit, as long as they're not diving down and jumping all over the place to a large degree, you're able to evaluate what that end sale price is, and then get into that property and evaluate what you need to put into the property, and then additionally what you can end up paying for it to still make a profit. So as long as you have that stability, I think it's a good market to be working in. 2004, 5, 6, when that starts to nosedive a little bit, that's when you want to back out a little bit, So if you see that coming, don't fail. This is an analogy I use. I'm a terrible fisherman, so if somebody has another analogy, don't tell me now because I'll feel bad about it and it'll confuse me. But email me after. So basically, searching for these properties is very much like fishing. You need to be fishing in all these different ponds and have a ton of holes in the water with all of your different sources that come about. That's how you're going to have the most success. It's utilizing all of these various forms. MLS. A lot of people say it's difficult to find properties on MLS. It is. There's a lot of competition out there. Obviously, that's the first place people are searching to a large degree, and you're going to have that much competition there. So when you do find some of these properties, I, at this point, am looking for the ones that are a little bit more difficult to work. And I have some examples of most all of these options right here that I'm going to go across right after this. Working with realtors. Again, being in the real estate industry, I really started to reach out to realtors and try to find creative ways to motivate them to bring me deals. Being, somebody that tries to think outside of the box to a large degree, I try to think what motivates a realtor. Money, obviously. So I really started to work with them. Again, started initially just with colleagues and friends that happened to be in the real estate industry. And said, if you can bring me deals, I can find creative ways to get you that listing on the other side, or you can be my designated buyer agent in a particular region, whatever it may be. It's worked well with some, not so well with others. It's been tricky with that. But again, it has been a source of excellent deals that have come through. It's also been a source of deals that haven't worked out quite as well. So you kind of have to vet those realtors a little bit with their experience and what they're good at. Obviously, wholesalers, there's actually some wholesalers in here that I've spoken with and worked on some potential deals with. Drive-bys, they're out there. They're everywhere. My first deal, which we'll show you recently, happened to be a drive-by, or actually it was a run-by, because I was running that day. Friends, hit up your friends. I'm not somebody that is going to meet someone and say, hey, I'm in the real estate business. Can you bring me a property? I'm not that up in your face salesman, but use Facebook. You can passively put out information out there to get people to know that this is what it is you're looking to do, or this is what you do. Whether it be, hey, I'm looking for some contractors for my properties. I did that a couple of weeks ago. Again, a very passive way to let people know, or let them know again that I am in this business without being all up in their face and saying, hey, I'm in real estate. Do you know any deals? Do you know any people getting divorced? And really hunting them down that way and being abrasive about it. So I put out there very much that I'm looking for a new plumber. As actually, we are looking for a new plumber, so if you know that. But it led to 4 or 5 different leads coming into my funnel for me to evaluate. These are properties that are oftentimes off the market. I deal with police officers in my town, mailmen, oilmen. All the service people that are out there in the streets, they run across these properties all the time. They see them. They're not ever motivated to do anything with them. But if you tell them, if you see a house that looks unoccupied, high grass, grown over, whatever it is, the driveway hasn't been plowed, it's actually been very easy for them the past month and a half here. If you see that kind of thing, I'll give you $1,000. I'll give you a bird dog bonus. And that motivates them to snap a picture, send me the address. I do the legwork. I'll go on the internet. I'll hunt down who owns the house, who's paying the taxes, all of that kind of stuff. Do the legwork out front. that is time consuming. That's the stuff at 6 in the morning. You know, I'm up before my children have to go to school, and I'm keeping an eye on, you know, how do I get to the owner of these properties? It's tricky. It's a difficult thing to do oftentimes. You know, a lot of these are absentee owners that have family, you know, they have a P.O. box in Virginia or something, and you can't find them. So you keep working. So, you know, ideally, I would like an assistant that was a private investigator or something. That would probably be the easiest way to cut to the chase. Obviously, there's a letter campaigns and things of that nature. That works too. I haven't used it myself to a large degree. I prefer to get somebody on the phone. You know, I'm pretty good on the internet. I can hunt down a lot of people. Our Yellow Pages people back there probably help us out with some of that, to be honest. But to hunt someone down using the Yellow Pages or, you know, Intellius or Spokio or any of these, you can hunt down a lot of these owners. And if you can't find them because they're 95 years old and they're not on the internet and they don't have a phone or anything, you can oftentimes very easily find their family members through the connections that happen to be out there and then hunt them down. You know, I email people that I can't find their phone number on Facebook all the time. And sometimes they respond back, sometimes they don't. Hey, my mother just died. How dare you send me an email? Be as nice as humanly possible. You know, it's about being personable and not being abrasive. I do knock on doors sometimes when it's difficult to find any other way to contact them. But again, you have to handle that with care as well, depending on the house and where you happen to be in the backwoods part of town. There might be somebody come out with a shotgun. Who knows? You got to be prepared for these things. But they are ways to go about finding those particular jobs or homes that happen to be out there. You know, they all work. It's a numbers game. You know, if I get 20 leads from police officers in various towns or oilmen or whoever it may be, maybe I get one deal out of it. But that one deal is always worth, it's going to bring in money for you, and that's just one piece of your business. You know, you have all of these various options of people working with you. So I'm constantly going to meetings like this, meeting with people that are like-minded in real estate to grow that business. You know, there's always people looking for buyers for properties. I'm looking for properties right now. If you know of any, we'll buy them. You know, so it's a situation where you're looking to really connect with as many people in this business as you possibly can, and also speak with people that aren't in the business and tell them that they can make money just by giving you some simple information. You know, if you know of people that are looking to unload their house, they're moving to Florida, all these various things, you'd be amazed at how much success you can have doing it. You know, in the past year or so, little over a year, I've done 16 deals, and now I'm doing 5, 6, 7 properties a month from the management side of the properties that I've brought in. So it's time consuming, but the way that I've done it, again, fishing, has actually worked out quite well. So now what I'll do is I'll kind of get into some of the examples. Well, okay, so here's some other ways that you can go about finding these properties. I don't even have time for 90% of these options right here. It takes time, but these are all ways that you can go about finding leads on particular properties. I actually put up an I Buy Houses billboard on a property that I own on Route 24. Again, we're located in southeastern Mass, so we operate mainly in that 50-mile radius. I have a piece of property on the highway. I put up a 4x8 billboard that I made myself. I used a projector, projected it on a 4x8 piece of plywood, painted it perfectly. I use my artistic skills. It actually looks quite nice if you ever see it. And I get leads from that. Not a ton of them, but again, you get 40, 50,000 cars a day driving by on a highway. You're going to get phone calls. You're going to get emails to your website. So that has been another piece that's worked. It hasn't been as successful as I expected it to be, but again, it's having all those holes in the water that certainly helps. So I covered some of these. Certainly your social networking, things of that nature, contractors that are out in the field all the time. They're for sale by owner sites, Craigslist, you name it. You've seen them all, you've heard them all. They work, but it's a numbers, again, volume. And when you do find those properties, if like me, a year and a half ago, I'm starting to find these properties and I wasn't teamed up with a company like Brownstone or somebody that was seasoned in the industry, when I do find a property, somebody gives me a call and says, I have this house that, it's in need of rehab. It's worth $300,000 on the other side, perhaps. I only want $100,000 for it. How do I know what to do with that? How can I confirm that value on that particular property? How am I going to fund it? If it's just one deal, yeah, maybe I can do one. if I got 5 of them, and if I really need to make a good living at it doing multiple properties, how am I going to go about doing that? And what's the best rates? Where do I go? Who do I talk to? Carrying costs. You got to take that into account to a large degree. If you buy a house, and we have one right now. We have a property that we purchased. Great deal. It's actually an example coming up later, and the closing is delayed by a few months. You got to take that into account. You have to build enough of an umbrella within your budgets to be prepared for that type of thing. Contractors, hit or miss. There are good ones, there are great ones, there are horrible ones. There are good ones that turn bad, and bad ones that can be motivated to be better. So it's tricky. You never know really what it is you're going to get, and every day brings a new issue or a phone call where you go, that wasn't a problem, thank God, he got that permit pulled, or he got that closed out. So that's all part of every piece of this resale value, obviously. So this speaking more to the fact that when I got in the business, these are all skills that I was not familiar with. I didn't have any idea what to do in those situations. I didn't even know before I got in the business, those were questions I really needed to think about to a large degree, a whole lot. And as you start to come to these meetings and meet with, again, like-minded people that are in this business, you realize, Christ, this is very important stuff, and that makes you more nervous. And oftentimes it makes you very tentative to jump into the business. It did for me for quite a long time. I have 2 daughters, like you saw in the picture there. I have a wife, and a dog, and a cat, and all this other stuff. Bills to pay, just like anybody else. So you have to take all of that into account. So oftentimes you can be very trigger shy to make that leap. So I kind of piggybacked my 2 together. And to be honest, I did quite a bit of the new real estate investing business in the other job when I wasn't being watched. So doesn't make much difference at this point. They probably realized it to a large degree, but I got most of my stuff done, so they didn't have much of an issue. So basically, I'm going to go into some properties that I have run across. Literally ran across this one. This is a few blocks down from my house. Ran by it every day, or at least every day that I happen to be running. I don't always get up and decide it's a good running day if it's raining. It's a little chilly, I'm going to pass. But you run by a house like this. After I started to get into the business and come to some of these meetings, I realized, what's going on in this house? It clearly is empty. It's all overgrown, and it's an absolute mess. As you can tell inside as well. So I started to do my research, and so that's the after. This is the after of that particular home. So I started to do quite a bit of research on this particular property. Where do we go? All right. So online, I started online, masslandrecords.com, MLS property search, but you can find all this stuff through town assessors databases, things of that nature. All of this stuff is out there. It's all free. It's all easily accessible if you have a little bit of ability on the internet. If you don't, I guarantee you probably have a kid that can find it for you very easily. I could probably start to use my 12-year and 11-year-old to find more stuff than I can very soon. I'm grooming them for that. So I did that, found the owner's name, 83-year-old man, couldn't find him anywhere. What do you do? All right, there's a dead end. This is his address. His mail goes to a P.O. box within town. He's non-existent. What do? I went to the tax assessor and said, are the taxes on this particular house up to date? Maybe it's been foreclosed on. Maybe it's bank owned. I had no idea at that particular time. So what I did is I reached out to the tax assessor, like I said, and they mentioned that the property was being paid for by a gentleman up in Haverhill. I said, oh, great. Do you have a phone number, an address? No, just this guy that lives in Haverhill. That's all we got. The check comes in. They know where it comes from. And I went on the internet. I Googled the guy's name. I found his phone number. I was like, oh. I was very excited to find it. I got him on the phone. Again, the phone call, you try not to be abrasive. You don't want to get on the phone and say, hey, 116 Highland Road, is that for sale? I want to buy it. How much is it going to take? Blah, blah, blah. You don't want to do that kind of thing. So I softly introduced myself and said, I'm curious about this particular piece of property in Arizona. I see that you live in Haverhill. I'm just curious if it's something that may or may not be available for sale, and what the status is of it. Nice enough guy. I kept it was a nice casual conversation. He said, "It's funny you happened to call. For the past month, we have been looking into selling this home. This was my father-in-law's house, and he's been in a nursing home for the past 3 years. We've been keeping it up, not meaning the house itself, but keeping the taxes up, which they're paying $6,000 every year out of their own pocket to go to the taxes to pay for this house that this gentleman is never going to live in again. That house, he's been in a nursing home for a couple of years. Anybody that knows, has anybody that has lived in a nursing home at any particular point, those bills add up really quick, and the state attaches to everything that you happen to own. So this guy, had this house, and he was, into it for about $200,000, for as far, for his bills for that nursing home. So they knew that he was, even if he got out of the nursing home, they were never going to see any value from this. So they decided they were going to sell it. They needed to have an independent appraiser come out, evaluate the property, $142,000. I go to the team at Brownstone, and I say, this looks like a deal. Again, brand new to the business. I think it's a deal. It looks a mess. It might need $20,000. It could need $200,000 worth of work. I have no idea what, replacing everything inside that house is going to cost me. It literally needed everything inside of the house, except for the chimney. The chimney is actually quite nice. So we, I said to him, we'd like to purchase the house. We want to make an offer on the house. And they said, great, we're going to hire a real estate agent because we're not sure of how this all works. They were a little nervous about it. I said, okay, that's fine. So we made a purchase of the house. We put $50,000 into the house, and we made a nice, comfortable profit on the other side. Turns out we actually sold this home to a gentleman that was so intrigued with the business that he is now one of our joint venture partners. He works with us, and that actually was my first deal with Brownstone. So we must have done a pretty good job if, the first guy bought our house and now works with us and seems to be pretty happy for the most part, right? Also, what happened at this house, again, this gets further into the networking of the business. You attend the open houses. You have people coming through all the time. You let them, they ask, hey, what's the story with this house? We purchased it, we rehabbed it, put it back on the market. One of the families that happened to come through said, we live in town and we are looking for another property because my husband is sick. The lady happened to be a bus driver. She had a bad knee or something. She couldn't climb stairs anymore. So they thought this property might be of interest to them. Again, it's a cape, which, again, you're going to see the next property. This is their home. So it's the same house. I don't know how they thought that this might necessarily work for them because it's such a similar home. But they said, we're looking for a home that we can purchase that is a one level. We'd be very interested in selling our house. So we went and evaluated their house, purchased their house right down the street, got them into a property that was one level. I think it was in Rhode Island or Tiverton or something along those lines. And they were happy as can be. And we assumed this property and fixed it right up. This is the after of the home itself. It didn't look like that inside. It wasn't bad. It didn't need a ton. It was in pretty good shape. Needed a septic. We had to toy around with some things inside the house and add a half bath downstairs to increase the value of it and so on. But again, stuff that my expertise was not quite there yet, so thinking, what do we need to do to get maximum value for this property? Add a shower to the half bath downstairs, things of that nature. So we did that. We didn't even need to put on a roof. We did some work with the driveway, and we were able to sell that at a profit, and that worked out quite well. So and fast forward about a year, I'm glad we did work out well with this particular property because this lady is now the bus driver for my children. So every day she's driving my kids around. And the first time she drove up, I was concerned, does she have a glare on her face? Is she smiling? Makes you a little nervous, push my kids down the stairs or something. But, so that worked out okay. So that's another way that you can come across business. Again, it's just talking to people. Let them know what it is you do, that you're looking to, obviously you're in the business to make a profit, but you're not looking to be a pig. You're looking to offer up opportunities to purchase other people's properties, get them out of a situation that they're in, that their house itself, it needed a lot of stuff. They weren't comfortable putting it on the retail market. They didn't want to wait. They wanted cash in hand to go buy something else for themselves. So that worked out ideal. So, exactly what I was talking about. My slides are a little bit, this is the first time I've used this presentation, so bear with me if I'm a little out of order at certain times. Any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. This can be as interactive as you like. I'll babble on all night. So. All right, so bird dog situation. We actually owned a property that we were rehabbing. This is in Mashpee. Again, I was going all the way out through the Cape to a large degree. So this happened to be within this neighborhood was an opportunity that came up. We purchased it, rehabbed it, and in between rehabbing it and selling it, we actually had some of our people within the office stayed in there for the weekend. It's on a nice little beach down in Mashpee. You got the commons, you got restaurants, all sorts of stuff. There's another little side benefit. The summer is coming, so you take advantage of those opportunities where they happen to come. And the weekend they were down there, they happened to be walking around the neighborhood, and they saw this property. Nobody living in it, high grass, missing a deck, you name it. I mean, it didn't have a kitchen in it at all of that kind of stuff. Wasn't on the market. So what we did is, they let us know that, and again, we were able to provide them a bonus for finding the property for us, which worked out for them quite well, and I had to now hunt down the owner. Back to the internet. That's land records. Somebody owned it out of Connecticut. It was an older woman, another older person. So now I'm hunting various records on, Facebook and Kellyus and all of these various pay sites. 99 cents to look up this person, and that's a dead end. And then you keep kind of hunting around. Eventually, I found, this woman, Joan Cologne, I think her name was, and then I found she had a son and a daughter, I believe. I was able to track down the son, gave him a call, and he said, he'd be interested in selling for the right price. So we did our market analysis of the property. Again, we're not Cape realtors. We do not know the Cape perfectly, necessarily. You can eyeball it and look at the market, but you can have a $50,000 difference in value or more or less from one street to the next, from one town to the next, from one location. It's so volatile in the Cape, it can be tricky. So we, contacted a number of our people down there that, some of us had done business with before, and were able to evaluate what that value was, we thought, to a large degree. We had in hand, occupancy permit for this to be an in-law apartment, a rental apartment downstairs, which they had been renting for a number of years. We had the engineering for a septic already in hand, so that saved us a number of thousands of dollars. So we were able to evaluate exactly what we needed. We needed to add an $8,000 deck onto the property. So we added the deck, we put in a new kitchen, and redid as much as we can, new windows throughout. And during that whole process, we're conversing with the property owner, the previous property owner, who told us and provided us a copy of the occupancy permit for downstairs. We're assuming full well the whole time that this is a fully occupiable lower level, which adds that necessary value to the property to make it worth our while. Well, this occupancy permit from 1975 did not have the proper address on the property at all. So you go to the town of Mashpee, and you provide them this, and they say, oh yeah, this is legit. That's the real building inspector back in those days, and yeah, this is the real thing. Let me go check my files. They go check their files. Yeah, we don't have anything. So you're out of luck. You got nothing. We have a piece of paper. So at this point, we need to contact a lawyer. We got to speak with a lawyer. We have to figure out what our angle is with the town to make this an occupiable space, so that we could actually sell the property and not lose money. That's something you worry about. So again, an area that we needed to retain an attorney. I had never worked with an attorney or anything like that. So these are some of the hurdles that you run into when you're on your own. It can be overwhelming to the point where you're paralyzed with fear. You do not know what to do. So this was a situation where we had the right contacts. The company had the right contacts. We were able to reach out to the appropriate people. Do some creative contacts within the building department with some of our contractors that we work with on a regular basis. We're able to kind of get just enough legalese on the paper there to get the new buyers to purchase the property. Turned out the people that actually purchased this property were the people that bought the first property in the same neighborhood. They were looking for another vacation home to spend their money on, to rent out, which worked for them. So we had to do a lot of different things. We didn't make as much money as we thought we made. We did okay. We didn't lose money, so that's better than a kick in the leg or something. So that worked out okay. But again, it's another hurdle you have to get over to a large degree. Active market.
Can I have a quick question?
Yes.
So for that last example, or
Yep.
really any of these, if one of those was say bank owned, you call the bank. I've actually tried to call the bank once, and they just said
It's available when it's available.
We don't know who you are, we're not gonna talk to you. What would be your strategy?
Yeah, generally you're waiting for when it comes onto the market, unless you know. We have an example in here of something like that. If you know an agent or somebody that is familiar with an agent within the bank, oftentimes you can get it ahead of time and kind of get ahead of the curve a little bit. But it's tricky. I've reached out to a number of these banks. I think with you, we went to the Tony Young seminar, and he gave us a list of all the contacts with all of these banks nationwide. The property is available when it hits the market, to a large degree. So oftentimes you're kind of fighting an uphill battle to really get that contact information. From my experience, I think it's different all the way around though. You have, oftentimes you have squatters in these properties. We have an example of that in our own town where, a family, the father had passed away, they had 5 kids. The wife could no longer afford the property. She had moved to Colorado. She left the home empty. I had reached out to the bank. Hey, is this something that's available? No, they just kind of pawn you off and don't give you an answer. Fast forward 6 months, there's a whole family living in this house, and it's never changed hands. It's still owned by the bank, and I'm going, what the hell is this? This doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Well, again, I know some police officers within that town. I inquired with them, and they said they had known this. They actually reached out to the bank, and the bank basically asked the police, how does the yard look? How does the house look? They said, looks pretty good. Thank you very much. And that was it. Those people still live there a year and a half later. They haven't gone anywhere. But again, this is a bank-owned property. It's not dilapidated. It's not falling apart. You've got a ton of people living in it, and they're adding to my tax bill, to the school system, and everything else. But the banks are tricky to work with. I haven't had a lot of success with the banks. The banks, that's why they're on my list of things that I haven't hit very well necessarily. Active market. This is a property that was active on the market for a few days. Again, I set up hot sheets within MLS. Anything that says TLC needs rehab. Homeowner no kitchen, needs septic, anything like that. We put all these search terms, and it'll spit out properties to you so that you can narrow down the field to a large degree, and you get them updated every day. I get them all the time. Every day I get a list of them, and I'm forwarding them along to Chris. Enough of these damn properties. They come through. But this was one that was very unique. I initially saw it and couldn't figure out if this was something. These are 2 homes on 2 separate pieces of property, but they were sold together. This is probably one of the more profitable projects we will work on without question. But more hurdles in this project than most 90% of any other project you work in. This was a project that was owned on Lake Winnicott down in Norton. It's nothing more than a mud puddle, but it's a lakefront property. So we evaluated this property. We looked into it a bit. The previous owner had looked at, he owned this property with this little shack right there, 500 square feet. It's very nice. Wow. You'd be surprised. One guy bought it, and he's very happy with it. But when the guy built this house, he never got the proper sign-offs, and he built the house in the floodplain. So he was not able to get an occupancy permit for the house at all. He went belly up on it. The bank took it over, put it on the market. We made a low-ball offer. They took it, and we're like, okay, now what do we do? Who do we call? So we had to take this house about a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago, whatever it was now, and raise it up about 3 feet. So you have a company in, they jack the house up, you pour in a new foundation, they set it back down. So we're now in the process of rehabbing this one. We had already taken care of this one, but we had to go through more issues dealing with conservation commissions and angry town officials that in a small town, they don't have anything else other to do than to mess with you. Where are you from? You're not from this town? Okay, all right, we're going to make you go see this guy, go over there. You got a crooked building inspector? Maybe, I don't need, allegedly. Maybe, you can be careful on that kind of stuff. So we're working our way through the maze to get these properties going, but now we have this one set back down, and we seem to have a pretty good relationship with the Conservation Commission and to the building inspector to a degree. So we made very good money on that one. We made excellent money on that little tiny house. But again, this is a lakefront property, which isn't necessarily our expertise. So we reached out, actually Chris reached out to somebody that he knew that was a real estate agent who specialized in waterfront properties. He has this handy little tool he likes to call the calculator to evaluate the values of different properties. So he plugged it into the calculator, and we didn't really believe his value. But he was dead on with that first property. And we're hoping he's dead on with that second property as well. But these, again, you have to be able to leverage your relationships within this business. You're not going to know everything. Maybe you do. But, who am I to say? I know.
Difference, right?
What's that?
$40,000 difference we were offering about.
Correct. Yes. Yep. So, these are the things that you want to leverage those relationships and make it worth their while. So we may very well relist that property with that real estate agent. We'll give up that portion, but in turn, we're hoping he brings us a lot more business back on the other side when he runs across distressed waterfront properties that he happens to come across. Keep developing those relationships. Keep reaching out to people. Don't bother them necessarily, but if you have something you want to touch base with them about, or a piece of information or a question, make them feel important. Reach out to these people and say, I don't know this answer. You're super smart in this area. Make them feel good and important. They're going to recontact you and not be offended by you reaching out to them oftentimes. And we also had to hire an engineer for this. Obviously, you're reaching out to your engineers. That's expensive stuff. These are all things that come right out of your pocket. They all want to be paid. You're the last ones to be paid, and we hope there's enough meat on the bone at the end that makes it worth our while. Here's a property. One of my real estate agent friends that I worked with in an office in Hopkinton happened to have a house down in the Yarmouth, I think she was in Centerville, but she is a real estate agent who knows the Cape Cod market. I know Cape Cod. She brought us an opportunity, which it was one home on 2 lots. So we purchased 50 North Road and 12 Featherbed together with the idea that we're going to clean this house up just enough to break even for the most part on the house. We'll push that out the door, resold it. Good enough. We did okay. And then we go to the town to get a building permit on this particular one. We are still working on this project now, and this property was acquired in October of 2013. So profit goes here. Wow, this is a fantastic deal. And every month it gets lower and lower. But we essentially had a situation where we had a building inspector or building commissioner and inspector that had a lot of power and were able to really make us fight for what was ours.
Well, to give you a little more details, we went to the building department before we purchased it, and they said the lot was buildable.
That's
And there was
correct.
a form that said it was
Correct.
buildable.
Correct.
And then changed their mind.
Right. So we go down to get that permit. They see the plan that they have in hand, which is a copy of a copy of a copy from a plan from 1975, where it doesn't show the property line in between the 2 lots. Therefore, they used a lot of their legal wranglings and went to case law from 20 years ago and said, oh well, the previous owner meant to adjoin those properties. So this is something you're not able to build on that land whatsoever. So at that moment, we're thinking, we're going to lose money on this project that we thought we were going to make a boatload on. So again, you try to, we have the plans in hand, we have the name of the guy, we Googled him, and we went to the yellow pages, which was fantastic. They're not paying attention to me at all.
Like you're at home then.
Exactly, yes. I'm not offended. So we were able to hunt down the original engineer who had been retired for 10 years. He said he had the original Mylar, which basically showed that there was a delineating line between these 2 lots, and his original showed just enough of it to prove our point. But at this point, we have to pay him. Because he's happy in his house, he's got his crane collection. His wife, I think, left him or passed away, I don't know, but he seemed pretty pleased with the whole situation. All by himself in his house. So you peel him off a few $100s to come to a zoning board meeting so that we can meet in front of them to plead our case with the attorney that we hired to speak on our behalf. Attorney was fantastic. I've never heard a better story spun together. All legal, proper stuff. He had case law. He had it all. Presents it to the board. Everything's there. There was 5 of them, right?
four.
There was four of them. So they had just enough to have the meeting. It was in July. And three of them, yeah, great. You know, yes. Fourth guy, well, I happen to know this family, and they passed away 15 years ago. I don't believe that they wanted these properties to be separated, so I'm saying no. Only took that one no vote of this guy that could speak to the dead to completely.
You can the Long Island medium.
Yeah, right. He must have some special power. So we appeal that decision. 6 months more go by where we go in front of the appeal board, and again, more attorney costs. We got to get our crafty engineer back out there. I think we had to give him $1,000 that time. He's going to make more money on this project maybe than us. But we were eventually able to get that overturned and able to continue on the project. But just as this project starts to take off, the weather becomes winter. You find site contractors that say, well, there's an inch of snow on the ground, I don't really want to do too much. And you got to find ways to motivate them. So we're a month away from finishing up this house here. This is the house on the back lot, but it's taken forever to get to it. So these are the things you're running into. You can't let it discourage you. You're going to get this. This is a business that you're going to be faced with challenges. That's part of the fun of it. That's also part of the extreme frustration of it at exactly the same time. So you have to be prepared for that. But again, this is an opportunity that was out there. It could have been nice and easy. We've been wrapped up a year ago, counting our money, laying in the big pile, the whole deal. And it's just that one little grumpy building commissioner on one day that happened to want to impose his power on all of us. That really tripped us up. So that's the type of stuff that happened. The unknowns. There's various. I missed the whole opportunity to use my joke on that. So, those are all of the hurdles that we had to. Did I hit all those? I did pretty good. My memory's not as bad as I expected. Thanks. This is a recent project that we actually had worked on. It came across my desk, speaking back to the point about the banks. An agent that I know is very good friends with the person in charge of all of the REOs in a particular bank. She came to me, she said, I'm getting this listing, would you like to come out and see it? I said, sure. Uxbridge, middle of the woods, up on a hill, 5 acres, gorgeous. You go into the house is beautiful, but very frustrating. I'm sorry, very, very difficult to get a firm understanding of. Fire pit looks like it's from The Hobbit. There's a seating area. There's probably $200,000 worth of just granite and brick and hardwood and reclaimed timbers in the house and so on. So this came across our desk, and we went and evaluated it, and probably 125, 100,000, maybe 150,000 in rehab in an area that we don't necessarily have contractors. We don't necessarily have a firm understanding of the market. There weren't a lot of comps for a 2,500 square foot mansion of 1970 meets 1770. You have a lot of contemporary odd things going on, but beautiful old materials, brand, you name it. So we looked at this as an opportunity to put it back on the market for another rehabber. We did find a buyer. Almost right away, we found a number of people interested in coming through the open house and everything. Beautiful house, it really is. I mean, it's a very particular style. But inside, the house has so many unique characteristics that it's beautiful when it's cleaned up and a lot of the 70s styling is removed from it. So there is opportunity for someone to rehab it, but the buyer themselves looked at it and they want to live in it for themselves. So we've actually found a buyer that's going to get themselves a rehab loan and do it themselves. So this was an opportunity to not even do work on the house, just to acquire it and put it right back on the market for as-is sale. And that seems to be working out quite well. I said that in West Yarmouth, she was thinking wood to knock down or something. Jinx myself, we're not anywhere near a finish line yet. So those are a lot of the examples that you happen to run into. Here's another one. This is the one that I referred to earlier, that the closing has taken forever. You run into these various. We didn't do a lot with this property. I saw this come across MLS a few different times. It was listed at $199,000. We saw best case scenario of that property being worth $210,000, maybe $215,000. Not a deal. You need $20,000 worth of rehab, we ended up at like 25. Carrying costs, everything else, it's not a deal. So I happened to see the house with the guy listing it. The realtor that happened to be listing it happened to be the husband of the family that owned it. So the wife and her 3 sisters owned this house after their mother passed away. On the market for $199,000. He comes back to me a month and a half, 2, 3 months later, and keeps saying, "Would you be interested in this house?" I said, "$199 is not going to do it. You know, it's just too much for us. It doesn't fit our model. If it was a buy and hold and I could rent it out, maybe. You know, we could maybe offer you a little less." So he said, "Just make me an offer. Just make me an offer." We offered him $120,000. Came back to us and said, "Can you do 125?" And believe it or not, Chris said, no, it's 120. We went back to him with 120, and he said, "Okay, we'll take it." So it was that understanding, again, communication with that particular agent, that this is what we do, this is our business model, this is why we're buying this house. It came back in the end and turned into a good sale, if we can eventually sell it.
Next Thursday.
Next Thursday.
We've heard that
last
before.
Thursday. No, but it's a good it has turned into a good project. But you run into different projects, not necessarily this property, but you run into all kinds of things during these. People had problems with ice dams recently. You know, we had it in one of our homes, and it cost me $3,000 in replacing a kitchen. I didn't want to have to deal with that. That's an enormous, and you know how terrifying it is to walk up to a house, check on the heat. Is there enough oil in there? Guess what? The oil ran out probably a week ago. Water gushing out the door. It's coming down the ceilings. It's all over. I looked in. I almost passed out. I've never been more panicked. I call Chris. Well, how bad can it be? The water's pouring. I'm walking through the electric. I'm trying not to get electrocuted. It's terrifying. I thought, I think I'm out of this business right now. This is too much for me to handle. It's too much. I had a support team around me, calm me down. We got it taken care of on that particular property, and we were okay with it. But again, more hurdles that you happen to face, they're there. The opportunities are out there. Keep hunting. It's a numbers game. Be persistent. If you do not want to work hard, this isn't the business for you. If you work hard, put in the time, you can do this job for the hunting for the properties online at 10 o'clock at night with a glass of wine or a beer in your hand and kick back and listen to music. I enjoy it. That's why I've been successful at it to this point. I enjoy doing it. I like getting out there and hunting for these properties and going down a side street and saying, "Oh, I think maybe that's a house idea." There's a certain thrill with that, you know. And then when you are able to touch base with the people and make an offer and potentially purchase that property, it's all better. You know, you feel like you've uncovered this hidden gem or something. And again, you know, having a little bit of an architectural background, I'm familiar with making the space pretty. I didn't know the values of it, but now it's nice to go into a house and go, let's knock down that wall, we'll add a half bath here, we're going to do this with the kitchen, maybe we'll put an island in here, you know, open up the space. That's enjoyable. I enjoy all of that. There are headaches along the way, you know. I do, you know, there are benefits. I get to wear shorts and flip-flops to the job. That's terrific. Well, not now. I don't advise that. But there are ups and downs with any job, but you know, it is a very enjoyable. It's been a very enjoyable time, not only doing this, but working with a team that I have. So, you know, if it's something you are looking to do and to make that jump, and I encourage you to do so, but be prepared to work hard. You know, there is quite a bit of. Am I going backwards? No. So here's more of the problems. I think I'm jumping the gun. I'm like a slide behind all of the time. So here's all the things out there. There's my example. Flooding. You know, we have that property on the waterfront. Permitting issues. You know, mechanical failures. Mold. You run into mold all the time. I don't even mind mold anymore. I look at that scares the people selling, so they drop the price way down. You go in. We know some people that can get it taken care of, and you know they do a great job. But everything's doable if you have the right contacts and you're networking with the right people. So keep all of that in mind. So with that in mind, that's a small glimpse into the day of what stuff is that I do. We do have a fast track program. If that's something you are interested in learning more about, you can go to our website. We have information on the website. You can certainly speak to the right people and get all of the education piece of all of this, you know, to acquire and to become involved. Not my area, you know, I'm just briefly mentioning it more than anything. This isn't a sales pitch by any means necessarily. But again, you know, unlike a lot of the programs out there, you're able to get into the program and work on an actual project, share in the profits of that particular project, and get in there and get dirty with the project itself and be involved. So it's definitely one of the certainly the best partnership program out there for sure. I've seen a lot of them. I've been to a number of them, the weekend ones, and there's fortunately, they're all. And there's value in all of them. There really is. I've been to even the ones that I came out right away and said, this guy just kind of babbled the whole time and didn't give me much. I look back a few months later and went, well, I learned this here and I learned that there. So it did have value to it. There's value in all of it. All of them are similar to a degree, but this one branches off and a little bit different because there are actual projects involved. It's not just book learning and driving around the courthouses and things like that. You're actually involved on projects, and you're really going to get a firm understanding of everything. And as was mentioned earlier, we do have a workshop coming up in June where we'll be covering a number of the topics that I kind of discussed there, a little bit more in depth. A full day is more than I don't know how long I've been up here.
Chris, do you have a flyer for that?
We do.
Where is it? I'll pass it out for you.
I want to staples before I can. Not as cheap as you'd expect. All right, so just kind of pass those out. Oh, thank you. Terrific. So that's an excellent way to learn a little bit more about it and get a little bit further inside information. Coming up in June. Certainly worthwhile. If you have any questions about it, Kim Harrington in the back can certainly speak to this a little bit more. And there's also a sign-up form we have on the website. Information on here, certainly. We're going to be rolling out more information with each of these topics, in the coming week.
Look for a coupon in your email from Boston Maria for $100 off.
Yep. And that is all. Contact information for both Kim in regards to the fast track program as well as this seminar, and then property opportunities, wholesale deals. You can certainly contact either Chris Coit or myself. You should have my contact information probably in the all of the information. I should have put mine here. Everything should follow through. Chris Chapin. Hold on. I'll pass out my business cards. This is unbelievable. I just lost major opportunity of deals here. We got to do this. We'll start over.
Just want to ask, what's the cost to be in a workshop?
It's $697, $597 for signing up through the Boston Maria discount. Any other questions?
One question, Chris. How many deals do you look at a week? How many houses do you visit to look at?
It seems like too many. I am. Well,
no, just so people know how hard it is to get a deal and what you have to do.
I'm looking at, from all of those various forms, probably 20 to 25 properties a week, of which point you whittle them down, you visit 5 of them, and then you make offers on maybe 2 of them. And every week is a little bit different. Different deals come along at different times.
Besides that last bank owner you talked about that you ended up just passing on, have you done any auctions? Any
Funny, we were actually just talking about this right before this meeting, that's something we want to get more active in. We have short sale specialists that we deal with that bring us properties all of the time. Because we're out there at these meetings so often and out there on the internet and so on and so forth, we do get a number of properties, but that's something we do want to free up time to get more familiar with. I've been to a few of the auctions. I haven't done any of the bidding. It seems exciting. It's not my money. Let's go for it. I'm ready. Yeah.
So maybe the venture program, were you working full-time?
When I started, I was, yes. And that's when I said I was doing both, but to a large degree, I was doing a lot, again, working in real estate and manning an office to a large degree by myself. Here's the thing I really want to do. Here's the thing I'm bored and tired of doing. Well, let me just kind of start doing this here. I know what he's around. So I did a little bit of that. So I kind of cross-cultivated my career a little bit there for a small period of time, but yes, I was. And it was a lot of, like I said, getting up, hitting the road at 6 in the morning to go drive around neighborhoods looking for properties, or looking at properties that I knew that were empty and trying to go to a town hall to find someone before work on the way, that kind of thing. Or again, all of the people that I was working with knew that I was making this transition to Boston, but everybody else knew that I was getting ready to make this transition. So they would bring me properties, and then I would bring them to Chris, and I'd say, "Is this worthwhile? Here's a house, beautiful. You know, it needs a few things, but it's got a wooden foundation. What the hell do you do with a wooden foundation? I don't even know what that is. It was crazy. I'm still waiting. That still might pop here one of these days. Yes.
The funding and financing and all that, what's your partnership? How does that work?
It's very good for everyone, my friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a negotiable, it's something to negotiate with any company we have to work with. And that's it. I answered every question.